We'll take a break, be back with more on the Gulf conflict.
Including pictures from that huge peace rally here in Adelaide. Protesters blocked North Terrace for 3 hours this morning in a demonstration against the Gulf War. They're demanding all Australian troops be brought home immediately and the conflict with Saddam Hussein be settled peacefully.
Organisers say this is one of the biggest peace rallies seen in Adelaide since the Vietnam War. Almost 10,000 people, more than double the number organisers had hoped for, gathered in Victoria Square to voice their opposition to the Gulf War. They marched through the city, bringing traffic to a halt, chanting slogans damning this week's assault on Baghdad and Kuwait. Many of the demonstrators describe themselves as average people who have never marched before. Young and old, women and children, businessmen and workers marched side by side, calling for peace. Some just joined in as the crowd gathered on the steps of Parliament House until the numbers spilled onto North Terrace, completely blocking all traffic.
Organisers say this is the type of public outcry that stopped the Vietnam War, and they believe it can stop the Gulf War too.
Despite today's 30-plus heat, thousands stood in the sun, overcome with sadness, remembering loved ones whose lives are now on the line in the Gulf.
If the war goes on, if the war goes on.
Rally organiser Mike Kazam says emotions are running high.
People are very concerned about what's happening overseas. They're very angry at the way things are going. I think they're disappointed and disgusted with our politicians that have committed us to this sort of thing without consulting the people.
But not all those at today's rally shared the sentiment.
Try and get to democratic rights in Iraq!
Police stepped in to separate this small group of pro-war protesters from the main demonstration. More protests are planned for next week. Margaret Parker, National 9 News.
Meanwhile, similar protests in eastern state capital cities, all along the same theme: end Australian involvement in the war.
No one needs a Gulf War. No one needs a Gulf War.
It may have taken the outbreak of hostilities in the Gulf, but in Sydney the peace movement rallied like it has rarely done before. They gathered outside the American consulate, setting off to a familiar beat made for the 70s, but which seems just as relevant today. The marchers condemned what they called the oil war. Anger also at the involvement of Australian Navy ships.
We don't want war and we don't want Australia involved in it, ever.
It's one of the most important things I've done since I retired, and that's 15 years ago.
Adding voice to the anti-war chant, a group of Iranians, once arch-enemies of Iraq. Other Arabs simply directed their protest at America.
The people of Iraq are human people. Stop killing the innocent children of Iraq.
And inevitably, there were those who drew parallels with Vietnam.
And I was here in Vietnam with my children, and I can't believe I'm back with my grandson. Just peace for everyone.
As the peace march swept through the city, organisers put the number at more than 30,000. Police estimated a third of that, far smaller than the old moratorium rallies, although no less intense.
Bush will hold him responsible for the mass murder of children like just my child.
Outside the Israeli consulate, a massive sit-down. The city coming to a standstill to reflect on a war that threatens to spread worldwide.
It may not compare to the Vietnam days, but organisers say this is evidence of a growing backlash against the Gulf War, a call for peace governments cannot ignore.
From York Street, the crowd made its way to the town hall, where, if the message wasn't made plain before, those who remained heard it yet again.
We condemn military attacks on Israel as we do on Iraq.
The rally marked an international day of action against the Gulf War. In Melbourne last night, some 10,000 peace demonstrators called for the immediate return of Australia's ships.
This is the greatest crowd that I've ever seen here.
The protesters then brought the city to a halt, a mix of professionals and tradesmen, pensioners and parents, even a camera-shy Kylie Minogue.
No, it's a very personal thing.
All united in the name of peace. Brad Schmidt, National 9 News.